Hi, I'm Joy Vernon, and today we are doing Elemental Dignities for the Greater Seattle Tarot Meetup, so I'd like to welcome all of you. I'm going to introduce the concept of Elemental Dignities and do a little slideshow, show you how to use them, and some of the questions that kind of come up around it, and kind of address some of those, and then we're going to go into an example spread. And so we're going to see it in action, we're going to learn how to do it, and then see it in action. So if you want to have a deck of cards at hand, I would highly recommend, if you have one, you can use any deck you want, but I would highly recommend any tarot deck, not an oracle deck, but any tarot deck. But you can, I would recommend, if you have one, using an esoteric deck that has the elemental and the astrological glyphs on the cards, particularly on the major arcana cards, because you need to know, because it's elemental dignities, you need to know what element each card is. And so if you know that death is Scorpio, you know it's a water, it's the water element, and so on. So if you don't already have that memorized, then I'd recommend getting a deck that has those glyphs on it for the major arcana, so that you can follow along and not have to look up, not have to refer to too many handouts and stretch your brain too much when you're already trying to learn a new spread. So that said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, the dignities provide a method to determine the strength or weakness of a card in a spread through its relationship to the cards on either side of it. And so based on the symbolism derived from the four elements, the dignities indicate when a card is strengthened, weakened, or unaffected by the surrounding cards. So elemental dignities allows the reader to find greater depth of meaning in a spread by giving more information about not just a card itself, but how it interacts with the cards around it. And it also provides that jumping off point for examining those interactions between the cards, because you can start with elemental dignity and then use that as a launching point to go into a deeper discussion or exploration of the cards and how they relate to each other. Basically, a lot of people, elemental dignities is taught in the Golden Dawn tradition, and a lot of people will use it as a substitute for reversed cards. It's not the same as reversed cards, but reversed cards often do indicate when something is stronger or weaker, and elemental dignities likewise often indicate when something is stronger or weaker. And so there is a way of determining if a card has a more positive or a just plain stronger influence in the spread, and when its influence is weakened. So in order to understand the elemental dignities, we need to understand the elements. And when I teach this, to me, it's really important to make sure that we understand exactly what's going on here and understand kind of the foundation of this philosophy. And the foundation of the philosophy is based on the polarities. And so in the Hermetic tradition, there is the active principle, which is considered to be upward directed. It's associated with such things as spirit, conscious, expansive, outer. It gets given the term masculine, which is simply a quality. It's not about the gender. I also say yang, but the spirit or conscious or the exterior components are associated with the active principle. And it's also a vertical force. It's a force that goes, that is upward moving, or that is the full vertical scale of up and down. And so the passive principle is a downward directed force. It's associated with matter, the subconscious. It is contractive, it's inner or internal, and its word that's the quality that's assigned to it is feminine, although I'll usually say yin. If you're really interested in the relationship of utilizing gendered words around these terms, tune into a lot of the materials that I have. We discuss it in a lot more detail in other classes that I teach. I'm not sure if I would have to look up. I think I talk about it in the probably in the astrology meetup when we talked about the 17 symbols to learn astrology. I probably talk about it a lot more in that class, and that one's up on YouTube. We're not going to go into it. It's an old-fashioned thing, and definitely not the way that people utilize these terms nowadays. And so that said, I don't want to go into it any more than that, except to recognize that it is old-fashioned. The passive principle or the receptive principle is also indicated by a horizontal line. And so it's either downward directed or it is the horizontal plane, as opposed to the active principle, which is a vertical plane. So the 4 elements, and you can see some of our symbolism in the elemental glyphs. So the fire glyph points upwards. And the thing that is upward directed is spirit, or the active principle. And so fire is active. Air points upwards. So it is upward pointing, it is active. Water points downwards, and so it is downward directed or receptive. Earth points downwards, it is downward directed or receptive. The horizontal lines that are on air and earth represent that horizontal passive principle. There is a slight constriction represented by that horizontal line, and that constriction keeps air from being as fire is the most expansive, it's the hottest, it rises up the highest. Air has the horizontal force, which constricts it a little bit. So air spreads out, but it doesn't rise like fire does. Earth, water sinks or follows, it pools or follows an existing channel. Earth, again, with the horizontal bar across it, is further constricted, and that sinking, pooling quality is constricted into solidity, and that is the indicator for Earth. And sorry, this is something that I could teach as its own class, going into all of this symbolism, but right now this is going to be just the nuts and bolts of it, so that we can learn how to do this technique. So the tarot suits and the elements. Now, of course, I'm going to be using the Golden Dawn tarot suit to element attributions. There are other ways of doing it, but for this, it really works best because the entire system here is based on a Hermetic tradition and a Kabbalistic tradition. It's really best to use these associations when doing this technique. Although now that I say that, I'm like, I'm sure somebody uses different attributions and gets great results. So do what you want, but this is what I recommend. Wands is fire. Cups is water. Our swords are going to be the element air, and pentacles will be the element earth. And that's pretty standard. It's just that some people, the primary swap is that some people use swords as fire and wands as air. Again, I teach a whole class just on that. We're not going to go into any more detail on it, but there's even some people use swords as water. So there's a lot of different options there. But the tradition that we follow and that we're going to use today is that wands are fire, swords are air, cups are water, and pentacles are earth. So the qualities of the elements. Fire is hot, dry, and expansive. Water is cold, moist, and contractive. So fire is outward moving, water is inward moving. It pools or follows that existing channel. Air, hot, moist, and expansive. That moisture gives it a little more weight, so it's not as light as fire. Earth is cold, dry, and contractive. And again, it represents that cold, dry, contractive gives it the solidity of like, you know, an actual clod of earth or a stone or something like that. And again, remember that these are the essences of the elements as opposed to being more generically a description of an element. You know, if you want to just explore the, you know, the earth or dirt or something, you'll of course go off into a lot more variety and you'll have a much fuller understanding. How does it interact with the other elements and so on and so forth. But this is the essence of it, is what we're looking at here. This slide shows us how these qualities work together to determine the dignity. So suits that are friendly to each other are well dignified. They share two qualities. So you can see here that fire and air are both hot, and fire and air are both expansive. Fire and air are friendly to each other. And so fire is the wands and air is the swords. So the swords and wands are friendly to each other. We can see that dry, fire is dry and earth is dry, but they don't share anything else. So they're neutral. Fire and earth are neutral to each other. We already did expansive. Earth is cold. So here's our cold row, and earth is cold and water is cold. Plus earth is contractive and water is contractive. So water and earth are friendly to each other. They share two qualities. And air is moist and water is moist, but they only share that one quality of being moist, so they are neutral to each other. Now, of course, cards that are the same suit are considered well dignified. So if you have a fire and a fire next to each other, they'll be well dignified. An air and an air, an earth and an earth, water and water, those will all be well dignified. So to summarize this, a tarot author that I know knew that I taught this, and so this person contacted me to find out how I taught it. And after I sent her this long handout, basically it's kind of what this is, but even longer and more detailed. And so when she published her book, I ran and looked it up to see what she said. And she's like, and her first sentence was, elemental dignities don't need to be complicated. And then she basically put this info right here. So I'm like, okay, I love knowing where things came from and what the philosophy is that underlies them. But no, it doesn't have to be complicated. And if you're not interested in the philosophy, you definitely don't need to know all of that. But I think it's interesting to know where things come from. So in a nutshell, any combo of wands and swords is going to be well dignified. Well dignified, friendly, supportive. Those are the words that I use. And so wands plus wands, swords and swords, wands and swords, any combo of wands and swords will be well dignified. Any combo of cups and pentacles will be well dignified. And so of course we're looking at water plus water, earth and earth, or water and earth. So cups and cups, pentacles and pentacles, cups and pentacles. Wands, which is fire, paired with cups, which is water, they share nothing. Fire is hot, dry, and expansive. Water is the opposite. It's cold, moist, and contractive. Those are totally opposite. They're ill-dignified. Likewise, swords, air is hot, moist, and expansive. Coins are earth, which is cold, dry, and contractive. So they share nothing. They're ill-dignified. Anything else is neutral. Your wands and your pentacles, your swords and cups, those end up being neutral. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop now and see if there's any questions on this part. What we'll look at next is the elemental correspondences of the major arcana, and we'll look at the questions that come out. Some don't have, some correspondences are not as clear, and so we'll discuss that. If somebody's new to tarot, I might have just totally dived into the deep end, but hopefully most of you are already familiar with at least the elemental correspondences to the suits, and this is interesting and lays it out in a pretty organized way, I'm hoping. Are there any questions?
What does ill-dignified mean? I mean, I understand the concept that they're kind of mutually exclusive, but if you're doing a reading, how do you interpret ill-dignified?
Well-dignified is friendly, supportive. Ill-dignified is I literally say that they're enemies. They don't support each other or weaken each other.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought, but I wanted to be sure.
Say, like, I don't know why it's hard for me to wrap my head around, but that's where I start tripping myself up.
In some ways, our modern minds don't necessarily wrap around it anyway, because it's a classical technique and you have to think about it from a classical point of view. And so that sometimes it's not ever going to fit in some ways. And so part of it is getting it, but part of it is also just kind of trusting it and saying, okay, I don't necessarily agree, but I honor the system and I'm gonna follow through with it. I don't know if that helps or not.
So for people that have never used elemental dignities, I guess I would say for some of the newer people, like it's almost just easy. Like we all use the elements as it is now, I think, mostly in a reading. You know, we look at like what elements are there or not there by what suits are there or not there. Right. So this just kind of, I don't know, just makes it a bit more colorful.
Yeah, that's a good way of phrasing it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's a thing is to remember. That's a really good point to just bottom line it. It's like we already use the elements. And the only difference with this technique is that you already use the elements in your reading. The only difference is that now we're going to say that the fire and water are actually antagonistic to each other. But water and earth are friendly to each other and supportive to each other. It's like, it's a very small tweak to what you're already doing. And it's just based on this classical philosophy. So the next thing, and so of course, obviously we already use our elements with our suit cards, with the minor arcana. The question then comes up, well, what are the elemental correspondences for the major arcana? And so this is where we again turn to the Hermetic tradition and the Golden Dawn in particular. There's again, there are different philosophies as to how to make these correspondences, but these ones that are listed here are the Golden Dawn correspondences. And so, and it works, I think it works quite well, and it's based on the correspondences of the Hebrew letters in the Hebrew alphabet. And so the Hebrew alphabet is divided into its 22 letters, which match to the 22 major arcana, and it's subdivided into 3 mother letters, 7 double letters, and 12 single letters. And so I highlighted that here so that the kind of gray color, the Fool, the Hanged Man, and Judgment, those are the 3 mother letters, and they get elemental attributions. So the Fool is the element air. The modern correspondence, we can add in Uranus, but traditionally it was air. Hanged Man is water, and the Judgment card is fire. And then we get the double letters. We get the Magician, High Priestess, the Empress, Wheel of Fortune, Tower, Sun, and World, or Universe, depending on the deck you're using. Those double letters get the planets. Again, I'm not going to teach all of this. There's a video. I teach all of this in a video called An Astrologer's Approach to Tarot. and it is on Vimeo. That goes, if you want to go into more information on this, that covers this stuff in a lot of detail. Then the ones in purple here, these are the cards that correspond to the signs. So the Emperor to Aries, the Hierophant to Taurus, and so on through the ones that are highlighted purple. The only question that remains is, how do I determine what element the planet is? And apparently some people just skip those cards and don't work with them. I, however, was determined to find elemental correspondence for each of those. And it was clear in the examples of this technique in the Golden Dawn information. I've got this big book. In that book, in the examples, it's clear that Mathers, who's the one that wrote the tarot section, it's clear that he is using elemental correspondences for the planets, but he doesn't list what they are. And this is why I suggested getting a deck that has them printed on the cards if you don't have it memorized. So the question that comes up when we do this is these cards that stand for the planets. What element is each planet? So there are, believe it or not, multiple ways of making those determinations. And so I have listed my favorites here. There's probably others that I don't know about, but these are the ones that I've come across. First of all, remember those qualities, the hot, dry, expansive, cold, moist, contractive. Ptolemy doesn't quite use those terms, but essentially uses those terms. I think they're drawn from Aristotle, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Ptolemy talks about the moon as producing moisture, so we can give that to water. Mercury produces dryness and moisture in alteration. So which one is it? Not quite sure. A common keyword for air is adaptability. And so if something can produce both dryness and moisture, then it makes sense that it would be air, which is the most adaptable. However, it's not the word that Ptolemy uses, so I'm just going to put a question mark in. Venus was considered, he describes her as being like Jupiter, but that her heat is more moderate because she's near the sun, and that she primarily produces moisture in vapors from the earth. And I'm like, I've got heat, I've got earth, I've got vapors, I've got moisture. And I'm like, primarily he says moisture, so I'm going to go ahead with water, but maybe we could go to moisture from the earth. Maybe we could go to earth with that one. He describes the sun as producing heat and dryness. That's clearly fire. Mars, he says, produces dryness and strong heating. So again, we can go with fire. Hot and dry, that's fire. Jupiter, he describes as producing warmth and moisture, and that is the air symbolism, warmth and moisture. He goes on to say that Jupiter produces fertilizing breezes, and so definitely the idea of air. Saturn, he says, produces cold and dryness, and that of course is going to be earth. Oh, and the thing that I didn't include here, sometimes this stuff comes up with the four humors from the kind of Renaissance period, Renaissance medical philosophy. And so that might be another place to check for some correspondences. The rulership is what I use. And most of the planets rule two signs using the traditional rulerships. I just use the sign that it rules that's first in order of the zodiac. So the moon rules Cancer, which is a water sign, so the moon is water. Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. Gemini comes before Virgo, so we're going to go with air. Also, air is associated symbolically with speaking, with the mind, with thoughts, and Mercury represents those things. So to me, it's really clear that he's air. Venus rules, I would have thought Venus, when I first started, I would have thought that Venus was water because she rules love, and that's cups in the tarot. However, the signs that she rules are Taurus and Libra, earth and air. Taurus comes first, so we're going to give her to earth. Sun is Leo, which is fire. Mars rules Aries and Scorpio. Aries is fire. Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Pisces. We'll go with the first one, which is Sagittarius. That's fire. This is how I keyed into this one. The example that Mathers gives in the Golden Dawn. This is sometimes that Golden Dawn book T is reproduced. Sometimes not even attributed to either Israel Regardie or to Mathers. It's sometimes attributed to Aleister Crowley. That version, that book T version, has almost all of the information, but it doesn't have the examples. The Golden Dawn, the big Golden Dawn book, has the example spreads, and that is in the examples is where you find him, Mathers, coming up with Jupiter and using the phrase, because Jupiter has a fiery nature. And it's like, okay, so Jupiter is fire. Where did he get that? Maybe because it rules Sagittarius. That's the only thing I can think of. So Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius. We'll go with the earlier of those two signs, and Capricorn is earth. Just for comparison, there's the exaltations of the planets. I don't even want to get into that one. I don't know of anybody that uses it, but every once in a while I do hear somebody describe it for some. I hear people bring it up when talking about elements in the planets, so I want to list it there for you. Dion Fortune in Mystical Kabbalah uses the triplicity rulers. Dion Fortune is pretty up there in terms of her level of respect and her longevity as being an authority in the field. So the triplicity rulers is what she uses. So anyway, a lot of people use the Kabbalah attributions based on the Golden Dawn, this Golden Dawn method. So take your pick. Like I said, I use the rulership one, and it's always worked well for me. The only other thing, there's 7 planets and 8 and 4 things, and so you're never going to have it totally even, but like in the rulership method, you get 3 that are fire and 2 that are earth, only 1 air and 1 water, so it's not very even. So at any rate, that's the elemental correspondences for the planets. And sorry, I don't have answers. I just have different ways of doing it, and my preferred method. So now we're going to try it out with a spread. These are the 2 pages of the spread, page 1 and page 2. So thank you very much for attending Elemental Dignities. If you want more, please visit my website at joyvernon.com. You can look at my blog, completelyjoyous.com. We have tons of great events at the Greater Seattle Tarot Meetup. Please join the meetup and check out what we've got coming up. And of course, you can find me on YouTube at Joy Vernon Astrology Tarot Reiki. I'd love it if you would subscribe. I just got serious about the channel this summer, and I don't have very many subscribers yet, so I would be most grateful to you if you would check it out and subscribe. So thank you very much for coming out and joining us. Let's get on and do a example spread. So who has a question that they want to look at today? Jen says she'd like to know about her career. So let's do that. Okay. Jen, do you mind speaking?
Yeah, I can speak.
Okay, awesome. So you want to look at career, and do you have a specific situation with that?
I'm self-employed, and I recently ended a major contract with my main client. Yeah, I'm just wondering what the future is going to look like, because it's kind of up in the air right now.
Okay, perfect. So one of the things when you're preparing for for this spread that we're doing, I called it in the handout, I called it the Where Am I spread. It's actually, I'm trying to sneak in some more esoteric stuff without letting you know what I'm really doing. And so it's actually the very first step of the first operation of the opening of the key, but it's such a good spread that it can be done by itself. And so I just want to, I love using it. It's a really good, it's a really useful spread. One of the things that we do when we're doing this spread is that we allow for reversals in the deck when you're shuffling. So, so make sure you are turning one portion of the deck so that you're getting both, let me see if I'm doing it right. I gotta not think about it. If I think about it, I'll do it wrong. And so normally when you shuffle, you cut the deck like that, but you want to turn one side of it around, and that will make sure that some of the cards are reversed. We actually use reversals only in that we want to see what direction the characters are facing. And other than that, we're actually going to be using our elemental dignities. We don't read the reversals, we just need them to know what direction a character is facing. Now we divide the deck into 4 equal parts. And the first thing we're going to do is divide it into half. And we're going to be as even as possible when we divide it. And so I'm just going to try to get right in there and get this as even as I can. And that looks good to me. So the top half, I'm going to put to my right. And now the same thing, I'm going to take the top half and I'm going to divide it again. And that looks good to me. And I go there. And this is really important that these 4 piles be as even as possible. A lot of people just want to be all intuitive and be like, ah, and they get uneven piles. And that's perfect for most spreads and most tarot readings. But for this, we actually want it to be a little more scientific. We want to have approximately 25% of the cards in each pile. So again, the bottom half, I'm now splitting the top part of the bottom half I put there. So now this is the top quarter, then the second quarter, the third quarter, and the bottom quarter of the deck. And so with this spread, these 4 piles represent the 4 worlds, which is the spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical worlds. You will flip the entire stack over. You don't turn up the top card like you do in a lot of spreads. You flip the entire stack over. And so we're going to do that for each of these. Let me see if these are looking fairly evenly spread out. Okay. And so the 4 worlds, the spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical. So the spiritual level here, what element do you guys think the spiritual level is going to be?
Fire.
Fire.
Yeah, I guess fire.
And that's, and yes, and the reason it is fire is, and because you could certainly make any argument you wanted to, but this is following the 4 worlds of Kabbalah, and in that system, it's the divine name Yud He Vav He, which is Yahweh, and Yud is fire, He is water, Vav is air, and the final He is earth. So spiritual level is indeed fire, and as you would expect, the emotional level is water. The mental world here is going to be air, and the physical or practical level is going to be earth. So now we take a look at what card comes up in that pile. This is the 3 of coins, the 3 of pentacles. And so what element is the suit of pentacles?
Earth.
Earth. And so now we have an earth card in the fire pile. And so is that earth card going to be well dignified, ill dignified, or neutral? You might have to look back at those slides. So we've got, yeah, because we've got the fire level, fire, hot, dry, and expansive. We've got the earth, which is has dry in it, but it's cool, dry, and contractive. It only has one thing in common, dry, and so it's going to be neutral. So the very first thing we get for our first card is a 3 of coins for a career question. That's a really good card for career oriented question, because the 3 of coins has to do with it's Mars and Capricorn. Mars is exalted in Capricorn, and Capricorn is very businesslike. Mars puts all of his energy into things, and so he's putting all of his energy into business. And so this is going to be a good card for productivity. We might want to consider also, Jen, where Mars is retrograde in Aries right now. We might want to look at that in your chart. You might want to, not now, but you might want to pull up your chart at some point and notice where Aries is in your chart and where that retrograde is happening. A lot of times, if I get a Mars card, and we've got a significant transit right now, it'll be relevant to you in terms of your career question. And so that's just a nice, and it's neutral. It's not well dignified, it's not ill dignified, it's just neutral. So let's go on to the second card. To finish up my thought on this first one, because it's neutral, not well or ill dignified, I just think that that's like, let's carry on business as usual. It's like, clearly this is emphasizing, I usually use the 3 of wands for self-employment. The 3 of coins is good for any kind of career stuff though. So we'll talk later if you're thinking about going back to some kind of regular job, but to me, this is, because you brought up self-employment, I'm going to read this as your self-employment. In which case it's just like, keep on, just like do what you do to try to get new clients and that kind of stuff. This to me indicates that things will continue, and that client will be replaced type of thing. Going on to the next card, we get the 3 of cups. And so this is going to be the element, the cups element, which is water, in the emotional pile, which is water. So we've got water and water. What is that going to be? What dignity will that have?
It'll be moist. Really moist.
Really moist.
Like,
and it'll be well dignified. Those are friendly to each other. Water and water. Any cards of the same suit will be friendly to each other. Or any time 2 elements come up together, in this case, the water in the water pile, again, that's friendly or strengthened. And so this is another. Now the next thing I noticed is that we've got 2 3s in a row. And so you mentioned that you have it was a big client that dropped. I would recommend that you try to be working, and I don't know how many clients you normally work with, but I would think having 3 major clients at any given time is your either maintain that. If you already do that, keep doing it. If you haven't done that yet, if you don't have 3 big clients at any given time, or 3 primary clients that are regularly giving you money, if you don't have 3 yet, make sure that you get to that point where you're always dealing with 3. And if somebody leaves, that's fine, but just replace them so that you always have 3 that you're working on. If that's not possible, let me know, and we'll look for another interpretation. But the other thing with that 3 of cups in the emotional pile is that you've got to be happy. you cannot get your work done if you're not happy and if you don't have good relationships. I always think of the Three of Cups as friendship. If you don't have good relationships with the people that you're working with, you're not going to be happy. And so go ahead and be particular about not just getting the next client in, but actually making sure that it's somebody you work really well with, you're going to enjoy working with, and that that it feels fulfilling to you. This again is really strengthened, and so we know that that's going to be one of the most important things for you, even less than just making sure your career is strong, making sure that you're happy. You can't do your work if you're not happy, according to this spread. So coming down into the next pile, we're going to leave this card upside down, although I'm going to turn it around just so we can see it. And this is the Four of Cups, and it is in the mental level. So cups is water. The mental level is air, water and air. What dignity are water and air?
Neutral.
It's neutral. And so we've got cups is the cold, moist, and contractive. Air, the air level, the mind or mental level, air is hot, moist, and expansive. The only similarity they have is moist, so they are neutral. They only have one thing in common, not two. And so this one is neutral. And we've got that Four of Cups in that mental pile. And I think, I mean, I always think of the Four of Cups as that apathy. On the mental level, it seems like I would say, just going with a strict Rider-Waite-Smith imagery of that card, and based on the other two cards that we've seen, I almost want to say that your hesitation over choosing, which is based on the Rider-Waite-Smith image, is due to not necessarily, you might not necessarily, these first two cards might be in conflict for you, because you might be thinking, I need to be Three of Coins about this decision. And actually, according to the spread, you need to be Three of Cups about the decision. And so that might lead to the hesitation in the mental level, because what's really important is actually that you follow what's going to make you happy. And it might not be the logical choice. I love this spread because we always have to balance our heart or our intuition against our mind and our logic. And a lot of people just will say, well, always follow your heart. Well, honestly, that doesn't work for everybody. And this spread breaks this down so that you can tell, in this situation, should you follow your heart or should you follow your logic? And the heart level is strengthened. It's got the Three of Cups. It's in the water level. It's well dignified. You should follow your heart or your intuition in this decision. The mental level is just at neutral. It's not that your ideas are bad or that you have undermining thoughts about this. It's just that it's neutral and the heart level is strengthened. And then coming down into the final, I'm going to turn this one back around now. Then coming in down into the physical level, we've got Jupiter, the Wheel of Fortune. And I'm going to turn it around so you can see. And Jupiter here is, remember, that's one that I think gets at each of the four elements ascribed to it, depending on what system you use. And so I use the rulership system, and that's where Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Pisces. Sagittarius comes first in the sequence, so we're going to go with Sagittarius. Sagittarius is fire. So Jupiter is fire. We've got fire now in the earth pile, the practical level. And so fire and earth, what is that combination? We saw it, yeah, it's neutral. We saw it up here where we had earth and fire. Now we've got fire and earth, so it's neutral again. That's a really nice thing. It really emphasizes the Three of Cups. That brings the most power to the Three of Cups in this spread. The other thing that's interesting is that by taking a practical approach, earth, at the spiritual level, fire, you can have a spiritual fire shift, Wheel of Fortune, in the practical realm. So in terms of bringing about practical results. And so I think go ahead and be practical at that spiritual level, follow your heart. That's your most important thing. And this will naturally flow and shift into what you need. Wheel of Fortune to me is going to be a natural, easy flowing kind of shift. Jen, what sign are you? What zodiac sign are you?
I'm a Cancer.
You're Cancer? Okay. And so Cancer is the Queen of Cups, and we're going to look for that card. And I'm going to look in the pile that's the most dignified right now and see what we get. I see the Princess of Cups there at the end. Do you want to address any of the things that came up, Jen, while I look for that card?
Well, I think what you said about balance is a lot of what you said is very spot on for kind of where I'm at right now and what I've been thinking in terms of how I need to achieve where I want to go, and all of that is through balance, and the balance between the mind and the heart and all of that made a lot of sense to me.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Well, your Queen of Cups came up here in the spiritual level. I don't know if you can quite see that. But what that means with the four worlds, anything that manifests in the physical world starts at the spiritual level and steps down through these different layers to arrive here at physical manifestation. And so the fact that your card is at the spiritual level gives us a little bit more information. It's like, this is the most important thing for you, this Three of Cups, but your significator card is here in the spiritual level. And so that's the beginning of the process. And so one of the things with this client leaving, this is a really good time to make the kind of changes that you need to make and do any reorganization of your business, any reorganization of your processes for your business, and kind of maybe even redesign some ways that you work. That's because it's at the spiritual level, which is the beginning, the spark of a new process. It's also a good time to, if you have even the way that you work with clients, if you've been wanting to make some changes, this is a perfect opportunity to let this new client that you bring on implement those changes, implement that new way of working with them, saying, I've learned this, this, and this from my past experiences, and this is the way we're going to do it now. That kind of thing is going to be supported there. We can set aside these other piles. And then what we'll do in the full opening of the key, you'd actually spread the entire stack of cards out. But for this version, my simple where am I spread, we're just going to look at your card and the cards on either side. And so we have your Queen of Cups right here for Cancer. And on one side, we have the Prince of Cups. And on the other side, we have the Moon. And so
Oh my God.
the Prince of Cups, I think, will be pretty clear. What element is a Prince of Cups?
Water.
He's water, because of cups, the whole suit of cups is water. And so what now the moon is one of our planets. So using my system, what element will the moon be?
Water.
Moon is water because it rules Cancer. And so and it's the planet that rules your sign as well. So now we have water, 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 right? And so what dignity is it when we have the same element repeated?
Well dignified?
Absolutely, it's well dignified. And so now we can see that all of this stuff is supporting you. So Jen, you're very, very supported. Everything in the spread is showing you as being very supported. And because because not only are you water, but the two cards flanking you are water, that really reiterates our Three of Cups that we saw earlier. It's like, follow your heart on this, follow what will be most fulfilling to you and what will be the most emotionally satisfying to you. When we look at these together, we actually have all three signs represented, because we've got Prince of Cups is Scorpio and the moon is Pisces. Again, using the Golden Dawn attributions, Prince of Cups is Scorpio, the moon is Pisces, and the Queen of Cups is Cancer. So again, you specifically used the word balance. Balance comes to mind for that too. It's like all of that is represented, and the having all three signs, like in an astrological chart, if all three signs were activated, it depends on the orb and everything, but that can be a grand trine aspect, which is a really easy flowing aspect. And a grand trine in water would be extremely intuitive, extremely imaginative. I would say the other thing that's coming up a lot, and I don't know what kind of work you do, but if your work is intuitive, creative, imaginative, relationship oriented, those are all things that are being very much highlighted for you right now. If your work is not those things, then it would be suggesting you've got to incorporate more of this stuff into what you do. If your work is absolutely that stuff, then awesome. But if you have some clients that want this and some clients that want that, this is the time to say, this is what I focus on. I focus on creative, imaginative, intuitive, relationship oriented. Again, any kind of water keyword, and you can, pull from your own, vocabulary or set of keywords to determine that. So that's the main spread. Jen, do you, and how it works. I think I'll stop for questions right now. So Jen, do you have any questions or thoughts about that, or any other comments you'd like to make?
No, I think that was just really spot on. I've been struggling with, like, what I do is bookkeeping. So it's
oh my goodness, so not watery.
No. That's what I've been struggling with, but a lot of times I've been running into people who aren't as excited about their business as I am, right? So it kind of creates a little bit of a frustration for me, like you said, about not being happy, because I'm not happy working with these people who aren't happy about their own businesses. And it's like, well, I can't help you with that if you're not excited about it, right? So
bingo. Yeah, you got to, especially now when all you're looking to do is replace a client, and then ultimately maybe you can develop techniques for actually training your clients to like their business more. That seems a no-brainer to me. Like who runs a business if they don't like doing it? That's the only reason we run our own business.
I somehow tend to find them. I don't know.
Well, that might be something seriously to add to your services. Not to take care of the immediate problem of getting your next client, but consider adding to your services something about how to be more emotionally engaged or intuitively engaged or satisfied with the business that you run. Since you're naturally drawing those people, or just like rebrand your business as you only work with intuitives and creatives. But that's what I'd recommend for the immediate thing of getting a new client in there. I would look to, of course, you want somebody that can, pay the same rate and use you at the same frequency that the previous client did, or obviously more, and increase that. But I would nevertheless still focus on businesses with intuitives, creatives, people like that you're going to get along great with, that they're going to get along great with you, that you have to be the earthy, grounded, mental logic person, but they're going to appreciate you and get along with that, because you do have the intuitive qualities and abilities. And yet most creatives don't know anything about doing books. I speak from experience. And knowing a lot. So knowing a lot of creatives. So does that sound like
yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I've thought about that before, getting more into that, having more of those types of clients. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd go that direction. Okay, cool. So that was our spread. Are there any
have
other?
a question?
Yeah.
I have a question regarding the spread, the setup.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I got lost in the beginning when you were setting it up, and I thought you were doing the Kabbalah method of doing the air, the earth, the water, and the fire by having the 4 stacks. Is that what you were doing?
Right. Yeah.
And so I had an epiphany.
Okay.
I like that, but I was thinking that in completing a reading, that how awesome it would be to come from the different stacks, having turned it over and determined which one is which. But in turning it over, how are you going to get back to the top card? Do you ever pull from the top card once you
No, you
split?
don't.
Okay.
Once you
You're
turn
doing,
it over,
and that's why we're doing the reverse reading.
it's just a different way of doing it. Like most spreads, I don't know why this is, who developed this. Most spreads, they just turn up, if you divide into piles, they just turn up 1 card. This just simply doesn't work that way. You find your card by turning the pile over. Now, what happens if you keep going? This was the first step of the first operation of a 5 operation spread called the opening of the key. Once you spread all those cards out, all of the cards in the whole stack come into play. Of the one stack where that significator card was, all of them will come into play when you keep going on with the rest of that operation.
That's where my brain went scattered when those cards scattered on the screen. And I was like,
I should have done a better job of that.
So, and that makes it more clearer too, to understand that all of them will read a story based on which element they're representing in that story. It does lengthen the reading though, in terms of someone who is down for an hour reading or half-hour reading or something like that. My question to that would be, how would you decrease the time or speed up the method?
Well, what we did today, which takes you through the 4 stacks and then goes to the finding the significator and pulling the flanking cards. A friend of mine, he reads at a restaurant / bar. Obviously not right now, he's not, but that's what he used to do. And he's the one that showed me this variation of this spread. And he does it's like a bar / it's a restaurant. So he does 15-20 minute readings for people. And he does that just fine using this method. So part of it is that doing this the way I showed you is one way to keep it shorter. And if you want to just use these 7 cards for an hour long reading, you definitely could, and go into a little more detail. Primarily, I think what you're really getting at though is that the more familiar you become with the correspondences, the faster your brain processes it.
Okay.
And I can do the first operation of the opening of the key, which is several more steps beyond this. When I'm just sitting one-on-one with a client, I've done it. I don't usually do it, but I've done it in 40 minutes on a number of occasions.
Wow. Okay.
So once you get going with it, you can actually read it really quickly. It's just getting familiar with all the different steps.
Okay. All right. And so career was its focus in this pull for this spread. if someone were to present with career, finance, family, and future. You could do the same thing with identifying the different elements for each one of those areas, or
Bingo.
okay, all right.
Yeah, in fact, one variation on this is when you lay out those 4 piles and you've got fire, water, air, and earth. Fire is career, water is relationships, air is usually considered conflicts or troubles. That's the traditional, but you can use it however you want to use it. And then earth is usually practical matters, but yeah, money is where I would put that. And so, and then you look for that significator. And the idea is that if like Jen asked a career question and her significator came up in the fire pile, which is the career pile. So the answer, if you were just doing yes or no, you would say yes to that. It's like, yep, you asked a career question, your significator came up in the career pile, boom.
And just focus on that one pile.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And so that's kind of a variation, but yeah, you can definitely do that. Or you can alternately just look for, not even ask them what their question is. This spread actually works pretty well without knowing the question, which is a really nice, when people come in and they don't have a question, this is the spread that I use. Then one of the things that you can do is if their significator shows up again in the fire pile, it's career question. If it shows up in the water pile, it's a relationship question, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
This is fabulous.
Awesome. Good.
I usually, you know what, I use this not the whole shebang like you do. Like when I'm reading, I notice who's friendly with each other, but I don't like throw it out with the 4 piles. I still have the 4 cards. I still say, hey, this one is supportive of this. So I know which one's like maybe weaker in what's going on or whatever. So I still use the elements, but I don't necessarily, but this is fabulous. After a while, if you're doing parties or whatever, your brain fries. So every tool you have, when your brain has nothing, at least you have like a formula until you like recover to continue on. Yeah. Knowing how water and earth like each other or not, like, the elements like each other, and that really does help support whatever it is, whatever other method that you're using.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just one more and it's one more thing. It's just like whatever grabs you when you're doing a reading. And if this grabs you, it's like, boom, follow that thread. If something else grabs you, follow that thread. So yeah, it gives you one more thread to follow.
A lot of people that don't like to read for themselves, I think this is a great method because it's not intuitive. Oh yeah, Johnny's going to leave his wife and I'm happy and I lie to myself when I'm reading to myself. You can't, this is like, you have a thing that says, no, this is what it is.
Yeah.
You can't cheat,
Yeah. Good point. Yes.
I was just going to say that I agree with Nicole. I think I read a lot like that as well. Sort of, if you're putting down a lot of like cards that are for a love question and you're getting a lot of fire and water together, it's not calm, it's not easy sailing, there's issues going on, right? So I use it a lot to give that underlying, I guess, context, or something that gives you sort of that perspective into it. Context is probably the better word, that allows you to know what direction this reading is going, what's currently kind of operating. Is everything in harmony and we're just looking to move it along, or is it in complete disruption and we got to do repair work or get out, right? Like it helps kind of guide you in that aspect. I think would be the way I use it the most.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've played with opening the key, but yeah, we got spend time.
A completely lowbrow, kind of like more juicy way of using that kind of a way is like, so if someone's coming to me for a relationship question and like they're wondering, like if we think about each other the same way, like I'll have them split the deck into 2 piles and then we see where each significator is. If you're in the same pile, you're on the same page. If you have ended up in different piles,
we can look around and see what cards are around, like kind of work on your situations.
Yeah.
I love that. What a great technique. And it is simple and to the point, but gives you a lot to work with. I'm going to totally steal that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Oh, it's a total juicy spread.
Jen has a question.
Oh, right. Can anyone recommend a beginner elemental deck? First of all, on my blog, there's something called Golden Dawn cheat sheet decks, and that's a good post to get some of the best ones that have all of the appropriate glyphs on the cards, so that you can do these spreads. Now, my
caveat would be
best,
that they like the caveat on those decks is usually people don't click or connect with the art.
well, and that's what I was
That's not
gonna
why you want them.
That's why, yeah, and it's okay, because I kind of address that in the post a little bit. So this Ciro Marchetti Tarot of Dreams does have, it's fully illustrated, and it's got the glyphs, so that's a good one. The I don't know if I have it at hand, but the Dowson Hermetic deck is really good with having all the glyphs right and where you can see them. And so that's a really good choice. It's black and white, and the artwork, a lot of people like it. I like it. There, Edmund's got it. I like the artwork, but it's a little bit weird, and it's got a lot of symbolism, so it can be distracting if you don't know the symbolism. The other deck that has all the glyphs on it that intuitives will love is this Tarot of the Spirit by Pamela Eakins. Pamela and Joyce, it's like a mother-daughter team, Pamela and Joyce Eakins. And the artwork is incredible. It's very intuitive, very, very kind of not representative, what's the word, abstract?
Abstract.
The opposite
Keywords,
of representative.
cut off those keywords.
And it's got the glyphs hidden in the art, so you have to kind of search for them, but it does have the glyphs on all the cards.
For me, the less illustration, if I'm reading this way, the easier it is. If it just has glyphs and whatever, I don't need the pictures, because I mean, they're nice too, but if I'm looking for the elements, then I don't need the pictures.
Well,
You don't need a snail on time.
the thing is, if you're a brand new beginner to this and you don't know, like, you're not 100% sure what the different planets represent or what the different signs represent, then having the pictures to fall back on is super helpful. But yeah, if you already know and that's what an astrologer's approach to tarot basically does. It's like, if you already have your astrology down, then boom, yeah, you don't need any pictures, you don't need the glyphs, or you need the glyphs, you don't need the pictures. Go ahead, like you said, Nicole, and that will just read based on the astrology. One of the decks that I really like a lot is the Quest Tarot by Joseph Ernest Martin. It's out of print, but sometimes you can get it for a decent price, and that's got good illustrations, and it does have the glyphs on most of the cards. It's getting more and more common for those glyphs to show up on cards. I see a lot of new decks in the past 2 or 3 years having the glyphs on all the cards, and I can't even think what some of the ones are that are new, but some of the new that are totally like hip, new, popular decks have the glyphs on them, and I can't think right now off the top of my head which ones are like that. But you can definitely find them a lot more easily now than you used to be able to. Oh, somebody put some of the some links in here. Oh, the Heaven and Earth Tarot, that brand new one from Llewellyn that has the glyphs, Trish, on all the cards.
Yeah, it's supposed to be out. I pre-ordered it and it's a little late, but you can go to Llewellyn and see a few of the cards there, and they appear to have the glyphs. And I didn't realize that. I actually ordered it because I thought it was pretty.
It is pretty.
It's a win-win.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So Jen, hopefully that gives you plenty of ideas on how to start looking for a good deck that has the astrological correspondences. You'll still need to refer to the handout to correlate astrology into especially with the planets, to correlate the astrology into the element if you're not already familiar. Any other thoughts or questions?
My daily enabling has happened. Thank you.
Yay, let's everybody go out and buy decks now, because you've got to have an esoteric deck in your collection that has all the glyphs on it. So awesome. Okay, cool. Thanks everybody for coming. It was
Thank
nice to see
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.